Hi, this is Brett Ingram, award-winning entrepreneur, and today I want to share with you 14 signs it's time to outsource and hire freelancers. So outsourcing, if you're an entrepreneur, is something that you should definitely be familiar with already. The idea is basically hiring without all of the challenges that come with traditional hiring, because we're just sort of hiring somebody on a temporary basis with a very informal sort of setup where that person could do some work for us in a particular area and they get paid for the work they do, and then we can end that relationship, or they can end it easily whenever they want or whenever we want, and they can work remotely. So oftentimes when we outsource, we're hiring people on a remote basis where we aren't going to be working next to them. But the real value in this is because we live in an interconnected society now with high-speed internet just about everywhere, we can hire people from all over the world. So it allows us to tap into a talent pool that's absolutely enormous. And because we're dealing with different countries, cultures, and economies, we can do it in a way that is very cost effective, because we can find people that potentially can do the work for us for a lot less than what we'd have to pay a full-time employee in our local market. So that's sort of the general idea of outsourcing. And what makes it really valuable is, as entrepreneurs, we always have a lot of stuff to do. And so if we look at it compared to normal hiring, obviously everybody knows that to build anything of any significance in terms of a business or an entrepreneurial venture, we're going to need help. But if we go the traditional hiring route, it's usually a pretty long process, because if we hire somebody and they're already employed, we have to wait for them to give their notice, then they have to come over, we have to do interviews. If we have more than one person on the team, if we're not a solopreneur, then we need other people to interview them. A lot of times it takes multiple interviews. They want to know what we're offering. We have to decide about benefits and all these other things. There's paperwork, there's tons of formalities. And it's very difficult ultimately to let somebody go once you've hired them as well. There's unemployment benefits, there's all these other things that we need to deal with. When we outsource, especially if we do it through a third-party site like Upwork.com, the beautiful thing about it is all that stuff is taken care of for us. We can actually do the contract and do the payment right over the service. And so the service will collect the money from us, pay them after they've done the work and we've signed off on it, and it'll even sort of take screenshots and monitor the work that they're doing and things like that. So we can get a very accurate sense of if we're getting what we paid for. And so in a lot of ways, it's far more cost effective to outsource. Now, the downside is it's a lot harder to find people that are built or bought into your corporate culture. So if you're a culture business, if you're a brand image business where it's super important that you have this specific culture, then it may be more appropriate to hire people. But in general, for most businesses and in most cases, what we want to do is actually leverage the power of outsourcing and at least start there. And then what we can do is we can always shift it over to full-time employees later, either hire the people we've outsourced to, or we now have an idea of what that job description is going to be like and we can replace somebody full-time. Either way, outsourcing is an absolute must for any entrepreneur that's trying to build anything beyond the scope of what they're capable of doing themselves. And so the question becomes, is it time for you to outsource? You know, what are the sort of telltale signs? How do you know whether you need to outsource or not? You know, on the one hand, as entrepreneurs, you know, we are very sort of territorial and we're also can-do people. So we want to do everything ourselves and everything else. The problem with that is there's a limit to what we can do in a given day. We all have the same 24 hours. And so it depends whether or not, depending on what our situation is, whether it makes sense. You know, when I started, I was working absolutely alone. I was a solopreneur. I had quit my job and I was basically working alone. The only people that I hired, and I did it as outsourcing, were programmers. And the reason I hired programmers is because they had skills that I don't have. So I had no choice. If I was going to build any kind of software, if I was going to build anything that required programming, I had to hire programmers because I literally couldn't do it myself. I would have had to learn programming and then do it myself. That wasn't really an option. But for everything else, every other element of my business, I did it all myself. And the challenge with that is, on the one hand, it's really positive, especially in the beginning, because you get a full sense of all the things that are required to make your business run. You get really good at understanding how it all fits together. You run a very lean profile because you don't have a choice, right? You're not throwing around a lot of extra money or a lot of extra waste because you're doing it all yourself. The problem for me is that I stayed that way far too long, and it cost me because instead of getting farther ahead faster, instead I got frustrated, I got overwhelmed, I had too much to do, and it actually stunted the growth of my business and held me back quite a bit. Had I just taken the plunge and done it a lot sooner, then I would have been able to do it. But here are some of the things I told myself as to why I wasn't doing it. Number one was I said to myself, well, I keep feeling like, once I get X done, I'll have more time. So I had a project that I was working on. I kept telling myself, well, once I get through this, then that will free up time, and then I won't need like extra help or whatever else because I'll be able to do all that other stuff. And as you might guess, that never actually happened, because what happened was not only did X take me 10 times longer, but I ended up having 5 other things I needed to do that came in the meantime. So what was on my plate was growing, not shrinking. The other thought or sort of mistaken thing that I would tell myself is, no one can do this as good as I can, so I can't outsource it, right? That was a defense mechanism and a rationalization, which, even if it's true in some cases, the fact of the matter is, J. Paul Getty said it himself the best. I'd rather have the 1% of the efforts of 100 men than 100% of myself. Because while you might be able to do everything better than everybody else that you would hire, you can't do all of it better than a bunch of other people would be able to do it. Because you can't do everything equally good. So you can only put your focus in one place at a time. So it was a fallacy that I was telling myself that to make myself feel better about the fact that I was overwhelmed, and so I wouldn't feel the pressure and feel dumb for not having outsourced sooner. And the other one that I told myself is the tasks are just too varied. This is an entrepreneurial startup environment. I'm a solopreneur. I'm running around doing this. It's not like I have customer support of 40 hours a week where I can just say, I'm going to take this role and outsource it, right? That would be very easy. It'd be very clear and very obvious because it's a full-time job for that in and of itself. Or, the things would just take me too long to explain to get help. It's not even worth it, right? Because if I explain it to somebody else about how to do it, by the time they figure it out, I could have already done it myself. And so I told myself these things and I stubbornly clung to that. I wanted control. There was a sense of inertia. I sort of had things moving, so I was doing it myself. But ultimately, it was delusion. And it was foolishness because I ended up costing myself, who knows, maybe a few years in growth and a few years of potential where I could have gotten a lot further, a lot faster. Time is ultimately our biggest enemy because the fact of the matter is we all only have a limited amount. And so we need to choose how we use it. I would rather use mine doing stuff that I want to do than doing a whole host of things just to get them all done. And I think that's a much smarter and more mature way to look at it. But unfortunately, when I was in the throes of doing it, I didn't feel that way. So when I finally started outsourcing, I was able to grow faster. I was able to focus on work that I wanted to do instead of that I had to do. And I was a lot happier and a lot less overwhelmed. So to help you not make the same mistakes or help get yourself out of that situation if that's where you are, here are 14 signs that it's time to outsource. The first one is you're feeling overwhelmed by too much to do. That's pretty clear and obvious, right? If you as an entrepreneur feel like I have so much to do, I don't even know where to start. There's no way if I had 48 hours in this day that I could get through it all. That means you're feeling overwhelmed. You have too much to do. And that is one major sign that it's time to outsource. A second one is your to-do list gets longer or stays the same, but doesn't get any shorter no matter how much you get done. I'm a big believer in task lists and to-do lists and stuff like that because I think it's super important to be able to get things done. If you aren't clear on what you need to get done, the odds that you're going to be productive and efficient are very low. And when you have a ton to do, it's super important to be efficient and productive. And so I, always keep some sort of a task list or whatever. And I went through this process where every day I had, X number of things I needed to get done and then a bunch of other stuff I hoped to get to. I wouldn't even get through the need to get done stuff. That would get pushed to tomorrow. All the hope to stuff would get carried over and over and over for months until it wasn't even relevant anymore. So if that's the situation you're in where the to-do list seems to never get any shorter, and even though you are getting stuff done, it's either staying the same or growing, that's a sign that it's time to outsource. Third one is that you miss or push deadlines and you're always running late. Now this could be physically running late, like I can't get out to my car to get to the appointment that I need to get to because I was doing work, or it could just be running late on deadlines, right? I have a deadline or I have a thought in my head that I'm gonna get this done by this date, and then that doesn't happen, so what we do is we just push it a day, push it a week, push it 2 weeks. And if what you notice is the pattern, this happens to everybody once in a while, but if you notice the pattern that you're always out of breath, you're always running late, you're always behind, you're always rushing to everything that you're doing, and everything that you mean to get done never gets done on time and always gets done later than when you expected, that's a big sign that it's time to outsource. A fourth one is you're always working, and if you're ever not working, you're still thinking about work, right? So this is a big one. Obviously, we work a lot as entrepreneurs. It's part of what we have to do, and there's a logical element of that that's expected in the beginning of a business. So if you're in the formative phases, you've been doing this for a week or a month or a few months, that's fine. You give yourself a pass on that. But once you get past to a point of stability where you're making money, you're at least, surviving, but you're still working all the time. And even when you're not working, you're thinking about work, then that is another sign that it is absolutely time to outsource. The fifth one is you get angry support tickets or angry emails from people that are waiting for a response. I don't mean someone who's dissatisfied with your product or service or upset with you for another reason. I'm talking about specifically ones where they were waiting for a response, you didn't get back to them in time, so then you get another follow-up and it's like, cringe, they're kind of yelling at you in all caps. If you get one of those, sometimes it's just an impatient or irrational person. If you get those on a regular basis or more than one, that's a sign. It's a sign that you're not able to get to it in time, so you just push it off, and then ultimately, until it becomes an emergency where people are really angry, you don't take care of it. That's a sign that you're overwhelmed, you have too much to do, and that it is time to outsource. A sixth sign is that you manage the daily tasks, but you don't ever get to strategic things. So I was guilty of this quite a bit. I'm pretty efficient, and I'm pretty good at optimizing things. So when I have a lot of stuff to do, I find sort of the quickest, easiest, most efficient way to do it. It might not be the best way or the most highest quality way or whatever, but it's good enough to get it all done and all done quickly. And I'm good at sort of optimizing in an environment in that way. But what happens is you get to a point where even if you've optimized everything, you get to a point where all you're getting through is all your daily tasks. And that might still be impressive, right? The amount of stuff I get done in a day it impresses people when I tell them because it's more than what most people get done in 3-4 days or maybe a week. But the fact of the matter is, I still can't do everything alone. And so it's super important that you can get beyond your daily tasks. Otherwise, what happens is you tread water. And you tread water long enough where things around you, the economy, the environment, technology, competitors change, and we don't. And so it might even be okay short term because we might be able to make enough profit to survive on that and everything else. But if we never get to strategic things, if we never lift our head up to see what's going on, the problem that we're going to have is we're susceptible to all of those changes. And all of those changes can make it very hard for us to compete literally overnight. A seventh sign is you do the same repetitive tasks every day or week. Okay, so if this by itself is not a sign to outsource, I mean, it's a good reason to outsource, but you don't have to. If you're doing your email inbox every day, it takes you 5 minutes, and then you're on all of your strategic stuff, don't even worry about it. But if you're doing, sending out your promotional emails, answering your inbox, checking your social media and responding to that kind of stuff, checking support tickets, and it's all these repetitive tasks that are administrative in nature in particular, and you're doing those over and over and over again, and they're taking a significant portion of your day, even a couple of hours. If you combine that with the fact that you're overwhelmed by other stuff and the fact that you can't get to strategic stuff, that is a clear sign that it's time to outsource. The eighth one is you feel like there's stuff that you have to do instead of what you want to do. There's no worse feeling than getting up in the morning and knowing that the first 5 things on your list are things that you feel forced into doing and that you don't even really want to do. That's terrible. And the fact of the matter is, when you're in that position, it's also not a great place to foster your own energy levels as an entrepreneur and keep you rejuvenated, because you're going to get worn out by that. When you're doing the work that you want to do, it's a lot easier to get up, be excited. Even when you're tired, you got a great energy level and all that. So if you're doing too much have to do and not enough want to do, that's a huge sign that it's time to outsource. The ninth one is that you procrastinate because you're not sure where to start, or you just know that it's endless. Some days you sit there, you stare at the screen, you're like, I've got so many things to do. I didn't prioritize. I don't even know what one to do first. Or there's just so many things to do. What difference is it going to make if I just watch that little cat video, or if I, go play a video game for a half an hour, or have an extra long breakfast or whatever? Who cares, right? Because the list is endless anyway. If you feel those ways, those are big signs that it's time to outsource. The 10th one is that you forget to do important things because you are too busy. So if you're not someone who's forgetful, if you're someone who's very conscientious and you typically, remember birthdays, you remember important dates, you remember appointments, and all of a sudden you get a call from your dentist saying, hey, where are you? Your appointment was 10 minutes ago. You're getting someone saying, oh, you forgot that her birthday was yesterday. If those things are starting to happen to you, it doesn't mean that you're going senile or that you're getting old. What it means is that you're overwhelmed. You have too many things on your plate, and so your mind isn't able to operate at its peak, and you're forgetting things that are important because you are just too busy and overwhelmed and occupied with everything else. The 11th thing is that you don't have any time to take care of yourself. I don't even mean free time, like going to the movies or, bowling or playing a sport or any of that kind of stuff. I don't even mean that. I mean the simplest of things. As entrepreneurs, we are the captain of the ship. If we don't take care of ourselves, we will eventually break down, and that ruins the entire business, right? So it's super important that we take care of ourselves. We need to eat right, and we need to exercise. If we don't have time to take a 20-minute walk, I don't mean 2.5 hours in the gym. If we don't have time to take a 20-minute walk or do 20 minutes of stretching, if we don't have time to make a healthy sandwich as opposed to grabbing a fast food, and again, once in a while, everyone does this, and once in a while, everyone misses exercise, that's fine. But habitually, if we don't have time to do these things, we're feeling kind of about ourselves, we're eating a bunch of junk food, and we're not exercising, that's a big sign that it's time to outsource. The 12th one is if you're feeling guilty whenever you're not working. This one's subtle, but it's super powerful. Sometimes our little, voice on our shoulder says, you have a lot to do in order to make money, in order to grow this business. You really should be doing that. Well, when you have a job, you have boundaries. When you have a business, you don't. And so it's very easy to guilt yourself into feeling like you should always be working even when you're not. And most of that comes from the fact that there's more work to be done that's left undone. This is a big sign it's time to outsource, because if you're outsourcing, enough stuff's getting done that you can have time off and not feel guilty about it. 13th sign is that your friends and family tell you work too much. Now, some friends and family might just be jealous of the time and they want more time. But if this is a pattern, if all of your friends say, oh, we didn't bother calling you for the night out because we knew you weren't going to come. Or, we don't expect you're ever going to, hey, he finally made it. She finally showed up. If you're experiencing any of those things, it means you're not around that much. And that means you're working too much. And friends and family will be the only ones who are honest enough to tell you this. But if that is the case, it's a major sign that you need to outsource. And the 14th one is that you're not present even when you're away from work. You're at your son's birthday party or your daughter's, whatever, bar mitzvah or whatever it is, or soccer game. And you're, instead of enjoying the moment and being there and being with everybody, you're miles away in your head constantly thinking about work. Everyone's mind drifts once in a while. But if you're obsessed with it, if you're thinking about it, and all you can do is can't wait to get back to it so you can get to work again, then it's time to outsource. Those are all major signs. If any of those things ring true or sound familiar, I understand. I felt all of those same things, and I felt powerless to do anything about it. Once I finally decided to just take the plunge and outsource, everything got easier, and I was able to enjoy being an entrepreneur and a business owner again. And by the way, just to dispel the myth right off the bat, because the one I hear all the time is I can't afford it. You actually can get outsourced things that are so low cost that it isn't even worth your time to be doing it. So you're actually costing yourself money by not outsourcing. I know it sounds silly, but it's absolutely true. When you are able to engage in higher level things, you actually generate more money than what you spend on the outsourcing. So it's a profit center, not a cost center. Maybe not initially. You might have to eat a week or two while they get up to speed and all that, but eventually becomes a profit center. Now, of course, when outsourcing, we do need to do it right. If we mess it up, and that's a whole host of other headaches and wasted time and money. I'm going to do an episode on how to hire the right way, and because that's super important, and it's based on my mistakes and experience. So be on the lookout for that. So the takeaway here is that entrepreneurs always think they can do more than they actually can. That's good, because it fuels our courage and our desire to start a business in the first place and to go out on our own. But it's bad if we let it dictate how we work forever and we don't make adjustments to fit the situation. If you have any of the feelings or situations in the list of 14, it's time to start getting the help you need, and outsourcing is a great, cost-effective, and efficient way to do it.